We're talking interview styles. This is going to be a classic educational video for filmmakers. Today we are going to be talking about 6 different ways that you can film your interview for your documentary. The first style we can call standard. This one's pretty safe and routine and traditional, hence why I'm calling it standard. Essentially, for this interview style, you just have your subject looking off just to the side of the lens where you'd be standing asking questions. It is pretty, routine and typical, and it's the way that I film my interviews whenever I'm doing any productions for Rogues Hollow Paranormal. The nice thing about this style is it helps the subject maintain a good eye line with the audience while still allowing them to look at the interviewer. The key to making this style work is that you stand pretty close to the camera, so that way when they're looking at you, they're still looking really close to the lens of the camera, maintaining that good eyesight. If they kind of are looking off to the side like this, if you're like way over here or something like that, that looks pretty awkward, so you want to make sure that you're standing pretty close to the camera. If you do want to capture that dramatic side profile look, you can add a second camera to the shoot, capturing that side profile. The key to this to make it really work, though, is you do want your subject looking towards your key light, so that way it creates more of a dramatic lighting, keeping their eye line still well lit, because if you have them looking off to the darkness, it's going to mask their whole face, which then it kills that eye line, kills that connection between audience and the actual documentary itself with the subject. So it looks pretty awkward, less cinematic. Make sure that if you do have that second camera angle getting that profile, make sure that you have your subject looking towards that key light. So the second method that you could use for interviewing your subject for your documentary is sometimes referred to as the Interrotron method. Basically, this just has your subject looking right at the lens, right into the camera, sort of like what I'm doing right now in this video here. Some filmmakers, if you have a little bit more of a budget, there's a device that you can use. That's where the name Interrotron kind of gets that name, where you can actually set it up and you can see the interviewer directly looking straight at them, keeping that eye line, but you're looking right at the lens of the camera. This device almost functions as sort of like a two-way mirror or a teleprompter or something like that. However, the cheaper alternative for us indie folks is once again what I'm doing right now, which is just I'm looking right at the lens of the camera. I'm staring you right in the eyes right now. It is kind of intimidating sometimes, though, for a subject. Maybe they don't want to just stare right at a camera lens or talk to a camera. So depending on who you're interviewing for your documentary, they might find it a little bit awkward, and that's where that previous technique of standard, where they're kind of just looking right off to the side, is nice. But if they are interested, and they don't mind just talking to the lens of the camera for their interview, it really does help create a deeper sense of intimacy between the subject of your interview as well as with the audience, because at that point, like I'm doing right now, I'm making direct eye contact with you. In turn, I hope that makes you feel closer with me in the least creepy way possible. The next interview style that you can utilize for your documentary is often referred to as a conversational style. Basically, what will happen here is you'll have 2 or more of your subjects just casually engaging in conversation. And when this is pulled off, seamlessly, it really does blend almost the styles of, traditional narrative scripted filmmaking with the, as a natural, seamless conversation, but with the rawness and, naturalism and reality-based approaches of documentary filmmaking. The downside to using this method, though, is in order to really make it work effectively, you will have to have a little bit of a bigger budget to have that second camera. You have to set up 2 cameras to cross shoot. That way you're getting, the other person or people that might be across from the other subject. You're getting their true reactions, in the moment during the conversation. You're getting that other angle. One workaround that you could try if you don't have it in the budget for 2 cameras, but you still want to try to get that conversational look, is you could essentially just point the camera towards one subject, get their side of it, and then reverse that shot and get the other person's reactions and their dialogue as well. Obviously, this really, once again, depends on who you're interviewing and if they're comfortable with this. because essentially you're relying on them to be able to act out their reactions and maybe repeat things that they said in the conversation, which, depending on who you're interviewing, they might find it kind of awkward. They're now, being put in a position where they essentially have to act. And if they're, not a trained actor, or maybe, they're not comfortable with trying to, force a reaction that previously would have been genuine had you have been capturing it in the moment, but now that they're just reenacting their conversation from the other side for that second angle, it might feel kind of fake, disingenuous. And if you're making a documentary and it's supposed to be reality-based, nonfiction as documentaries are, it does lose a lot of that authenticity. And so you may just want to kind of stray away from that, unless your subject, is really comfortable with that and they feel good and confident being able to pull that off, then you can give it a shot. So this fourth interview style, you may be familiar with it if you know about reflexive documentaries or participatory documentaries, but this is similar to the conversational style in that, it's a conversation between two people. However, rather than just being two subjects, you as the filmmaker, you're inserting yourself into the movie, and you are that second person, and you're getting, your responses, you're getting your questions, you're getting your reactions, along with the subject of the interview. You're capturing all of that in the moment. However, like the conversational style between the two subjects, this reflexive participatory documentary style where you insert yourself in is also going to require two camera angles, so that's one potential downside. However, also like the conversational style, the workaround for this is the same. Rather than getting the other subject's perspective, just point the camera at your subject, ask your questions just as you normally would. Then you can just flip the camera around, get that reverse shot, and just ask those questions again right to the camera, as if you are in the moment talking to that other person. Obviously, in this case, you wouldn't be. You would just be reenacting the conversation. But if you feel confident enough in yourself to be able to pull that off, it's a little bit less risky than asking a subject to act out and reenact their genuine reactions from a conversation. If you feel confident that you yourself are able to pull that off and act that out and still come off as genuine, then this is a pretty decent style if you want to insert yourself into the movie and be part of the documentary instead of just being behind the scenes only. Another way that you can insert yourself into the documentary, but maybe a way that might be more natural and feel less formal, even leans heavier into that conversational style, where rather than you just sitting across from the subject and going back and forth asking the questions like you normally would, maybe you and the subject are participating in an activity together. You might be going out for a drink, getting a bite to eat, maybe even playing a game together, taking a walk together outside, whatever the case may be, but you're filming that interaction like a conversation. It leans heavier into that conversational side, but then you still, as the filmmaker, get to also be a character within your own documentary story. However, the downside with either of these approaches of placing yourself in the film is that not every documentary really should be a participatory documentary. This works a lot better for if you're an investigative journalist and the film is more of a journalistic piece. That really works because you're almost expected to be an on-screen personality. But in a lot of documentary films, it's actually counterintuitive towards the overall message of the film, and it takes away some of that spotlight from your subject, who the movie should be about, and places more emphasis on you when it really doesn't need to be. So only use these styles if it really does fit, if it really is necessary to your story that you are part of the movie. Don't just insert yourself into any documentary, because like I said, in a lot of cases, and in fact in most cases, you don't want to be part of the documentary. You just want to stay behind the camera and cut yourself out of it. So use these at your discretion. Finally, the last approach that you can take for your interview style is a voiceover only approach, or even better, maybe just a voiceover mostly, and I'll get to that here in a second. There's this common rule among documentary filmmakers that's known as the 80-20 rule. Basically what that means is that 80% of your film should be comprised of action or scenes or B-roll, and only about 20% of your final runtime should be talking head interview footage. So if you can get even more B-roll than that, and you never have enough B-roll, that's one thing that you'll learn when you go out to make your first documentary. You never have enough B-roll, but if you can get even more extra B-roll and layer that over top, and maybe only have about 5 to 10% of your final runtime be talking heads, or even in some cases 0%, meaning that the whole thing is just action that goes along with what the subject is talking about in your interview, you can really go with this voiceover only approach. My word of caution and my advice is still shoot that A-roll, still shoot that interview with your camera as if you are going to use talking head footage, because even if once you get into the edit you're going to cut that out, you might find yourself in a situation where you might not have enough B-roll, or you might not have enough relevant B-roll. And the last thing that you want to do is try to force in, shots that really don't directly correlate to what your subject is talking about. And in those instances, it might actually be better to see the person talking. That way there you have that to cut to. So always shoot that A-roll anyway, even if you want to try to minimize it and go with the voiceover only approach to your interview. So that's my only word of caution for that. So anyways, what is your favorite interview style to use whenever you're working on your own documentaries? I'd like to hear about it. Let me know down in the comments. But anyway, there you have it. Those are 6 interview techniques that you can use on your documentary film. Remember, if you like this content and you want to see even more videos on indie filmmaking, go ahead and drop a like, subscribe to Franz Productions, and hit that bell for notifications so you never miss a new video. But anyway, guys, that is all I have for you here today. Until next time, that's a wrap.